Hello, week 2, I'm back at home, so less scenic surroundings now. There might be a little bit of background noise here and there. I am sharing a home office with my wife at the moment, and also you can just see the two small dogs here. They can occasionally be terrible beasts. Hopefully they won't be too much. I realized last week I spent a lot of time talking about storyboards and the value that they have to your story. I didn't actually show you how to do one. So here is that, basically. And again, it doesn't have to be a great work of art, just like straightforward, basic information. The trick is to have your little frame, and you want to make sure that it is a rectangle so that it reflects the proportions of the screen that you're going to use. And then you are just drawing very, very simple information into that. That is a storyboard. Well, that's one frame from a storyboard. So we can see in this wide, it's establishing the context, it's establishing the where and the when, so we can see that it's daytime, because we can see the sun up there. We can see that it's a wide, there's the W. So that goes in the top left corner. And then all the details go at the bottom. This is Jake at the Opera House, which we can clearly see. There's Jake, there's the Opera House. There it is, a, award-winning, perfect artistic rendition of the Opera House. That's as good as it needs to be. Then we move on to our mid. So in our mid, we can see that Jake has banged his shin, and there's Courtney in the back. She's also expressing shock at him having done this. Like, probably shock more than anything that there's a coffee table standing outside the Opera House that he's managed to bang his shin on. Who knows why that's there? Maybe we'll find out in the course of the story. Point being, we know it's a mid, we know there's Jake, we can see the details of his clothing and what his appearance is, and then we can see Courtney in the background, so we get a sense of the relationship. Then we move to our close-up. I've actually done an extreme close-up here, so this is Jake's eye, so we can really focus on the pain in his expression having banged his shin. But that is a storyboard. We have just told a story in 3 frames. Very simple. Cool, now that's out of the way. This week is called Protagonist, Change, and the Devil in the Details. There's kind of a lot more information in this one rather than just storyboard and pitch, but it should be straightforward enough. This is basically like the core of telling your story. And we kind of covered the start of it last week when we talked about pitching, because we talked about how important it is to be able to communicate your story in a single sentence. One of the tricks that I've learned is from Vince Gilligan, the creator of the TV series Breaking Bad. Here's a little clip.
Chemistry is the study of matter, but I prefer to see it as the study of change.
So essentially that's what's at the core of Breaking Bad. Chemistry is the study of change, but so is story. And Breaking Bad happens to be a story about a chemist undergoing change. He starts off as this reasonably innocent high school chemistry teacher, goes from that to being a criminal mastermind with enormous consequences for himself and all of the people around him. The story is compelling because it charts that change clearly for this one character. Now, that's a TV series that has an ensemble cast. Lots of other characters with lots of other things going on, really complex, emotionally developed human characters. But at the core of all of that is Walter White. He is our protagonist. Now, the beauty of that example is that he is not a good person, if we're talking on a moral scale. A protagonist does not have to be a hero. They are simply the person who is driving the action forward. So for your story, and it doesn't matter what kind of story it is, you might be doing something that is more, confessional, more related to yourself, a lot simpler than something as, bombastic and crazy and deep as Breaking Bad. I'm not expecting you to make Breaking Bad, don't worry, I couldn't do it. But the same rules still apply. At the core of your story, you should have one major character who experiences change. For a simpler example, because you guys are going to be making short films, let's look at a short film. Let's look at Presto. So while Presto is the name of the magician in this Pixar short film, I think the protagonist is his rabbit assistant, who we'll call Alec. Presto shows Alec the rabbit, who is furious at this magician for refusing to give him a carrot, and so chooses to get revenge on Presto by ruining his magic show in front of a live audience. So this is really simple and really straightforward and really fun. It is mostly just about this rabbit trolling this magician and the various different ways that he can make Presto hurt himself in order to get what he wants. So it kind of paints Alec as being very petulant and simplistic. He just wants the right, like he's an animal. He has one urge, which is the carrot. I just want the food. And he will do whatever it takes to get that thing. But by the end of it, we now have a more positive relationship between Alec and Presto, because this ridiculous series of stunts that Alec has pulled has actually kind of made the show better than it could have possibly been. And so we now have a sense of unity between the two characters. So, essentially the story is about, an antagonistic relationship becoming a positive one, a partnership, with Alec feeling like he has more of a stake in that by the end because he's on the poster. So a very simple change. The relationship between these two characters changes, and also Alec gets what he wants. He gets the carrot in the end. Alec is what I would call an active protagonist. So what that means is he is actually active in moving the story forward. He takes actions to move the story forward. The opposite of that is an inactive protagonist. So this is basically someone who just sits and has stuff happen to them. A show like The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix has a mix of active and inactive protagonists. This is an ensemble show, so it doesn't really have the one single protagonist who guides us through the entire thing. It's really about the family. But episode by episode, they break it down so that there is one character who is leading the action forward. A character like Nell is a more inactive protagonist because she has a lot of things happening to her. She is not pushing the narrative along. It's about the experiences that she is having in and around Hill House. Whereas a character like Hugh, we see as the show goes on, is a more active protagonist. He has more agency. He makes things happen with his choices. General rule, inactive protagonists are fine. There are some great movies that have inactive protagonists, but as a general rule, to get your audience on board with your main character, have them do stuff. Have them push the story forward. It's always compelling to see someone who is good at what they do what they do well. But even if they're a complete and total bumbling idiot like Howard Ratner in Uncut Gems, they can still push the narrative forward. They can still make choices that propel action. Uncut Gems is really, really compelling because it is constantly pushed forward by the choices that Howard makes. Things are not passively happening to him. He makes bets, he makes choices, and then consequences follow. And finally, the vaguest of the titles that I've chosen, The Devil and the Details. So you remember last week we talked about close-ups, and we talked about how this is kind of something you can use to really distinguish yourself because only you are going to choose the close-ups that you choose. The details that you've decided to focus on are what makes the story yours. It doesn't matter what kind of story that you're making. You could be making a film like the Exquisite Corpse film that we made last year with Evolve Youth Housing, which was a little more esoteric. It wasn't a narrative with a protagonist in it, which, again, while I'm giving you these rules, that doesn't mean that your film has to follow them to the letter. The beauty of rules in filmmaking is that they are made to be bent and most can be broken. The trick is to know what the rules are so that when you break them, you know what you're doing and you can feel satisfied knowing that you're doing it because it's fun to break the rules, you understand. The details that we chose to use in that film were, I think, what made it interesting and compelling because it revealed little things about the people that were involved in the process. So while I have spent a lot of time talking about these sort of broad stroke narrative rules, having a protagonist who drives the action forward, having a clear beginning, middle, and end, wides, mids, closes, all these super broad strokes. There's so many little individual details within that make the film yours, make the story yours, and make it into something that I could not make because I am not you. Again, I'm going to refer back to The Haunting of Hill House because it's exceptional. It's really, really good. Where they place details is in the background of so many of the shots within this show. It is, at its core, a ghost story, and so the detail that they have chosen to emphasize is Ghosts, lots of them in many, many places that you would not expect to see them. In plenty of shots where they are not the focus, where there's no big jump scare, there's no big atmospheric build to the reveal of a ghost as there would be in, your more traditional horror films. There just are ghosts. They are there. They're present. They're always present. So that gives the overall feeling of the show this kind of additional tension. You're always seeking the corners and the backgrounds of each frame, looking for what could be there, because there's almost always something. That is a detail that distinguishes that show. So find places to put in details. It could simply be the clothes that you're wearing, the little, like accoutrements you have, the jewelry. It could be the way that your character walks. Could be the sounds in the environment that your character picks up, or that you as a filmmaker choose to pick up. The devil is in the details, Pick a few details that you can weave through your narrative, because it's what gives us as an audience a sense of your craft. And also something to sort of like anchor ourselves with. We will find ourselves looking for those details the way our brains work. We're constantly looking for patterns that we can recognize. So it's a good way of getting your audience in on the fun of the narrative. Regardless of the story that you're telling, those details will distinguish you. So now that we've started on our storyboards, hopefully this will give you an opportunity to make sure that looking over your storyboards, you feel that there is this clear arc of change, that you have one character who is pushing the story forward, actively making choices, and then those choices have ramifications within the world of your narrative. Think of a story that you really love, tell me who the protagonist is, and tell me what it is about them that changes over the course of the narrative, and what they do to bring about that change, what they push forward, what they propel. Then let's talk details. Let's find the details in your story that are going to make it something that we as an audience can really sink our teeth into. That's it for this week. I will see you in the workshop.